Hello, everyone, and welcome to Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. Today, I want to introduce you to my guest, Alisha Lunsford, a straight, cisgender, female, sex educator, and sex-positive parent coach. Alisha helps parents talk with their kids about bodies, sex, and safety with confidence. She provides straightforward sex education for parents of toddlers, teens, and in-betweens. She focuses on both mental and physical health while providing insight on a variety of content ranging from safety, sexual predators, puberty, LGBTQIA, consent, porn exposure, birth control, and all the nooks and crannies throughout. Today's discussion will focus on how Alisha grew up without empowerment over her body, marked by instability, shame, and a deep longing for guidance and acceptance. By 15, she was drinking, using drugs, and searching for validation in all the wrong places. High school was a blur of living with friends, couch hopping, and struggling to keep up at work and school. These experiences and many others led her down the path of helping parents take a different approach. She guides parents to help kids focus on self-respect and body confidence to grow up feeling empowered, secure, and free from shame. So without further ado, let's jump right into our conversation. You're listening to Today's Leaders, from Teens to Titans. Hi, I'm Lorraine Connell, a teen leadership coach. I transitioned from teaching chemistry to coaching teens in leadership, helping them realize they can do hard things. We've often believed that leadership is an innate trait, but it's actually a skill that you build and improve. On this show, you'll meet today's leaders who share their teenage experiences, revealing how they developed confidence, direction, and the tools to become the leaders they are now. You'll discover how you or the teens in your life have the potential to become confident leaders, even if it doesn't seem possible. Welcome, Alisha. I'm so grateful to have you today.
Thank you so much. I am super excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. So, taking a trip down memory lane, I would love for you to go back in time and review and share things that happened to you as a teenager in respect to how they impacted and created the person that sits in front of me today and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. As I was listening to you read the bio, I was thinking, wow, like there was a lot of shit that went down. It's different when you hear it all like in a neat little package like that, I guess, where it's like, wow, that was quite the journey. So I grew up in a very conservative religious household. And the message that women received about their bodies is that, like, first of all, the first thing is that your body belongs to God. And then second, your body belongs to your husband. And then once you have kids, it's it goes to your kids. But we never received a message that your body belongs to yourself. So growing up that way, it was hard to feel empowered with almost anything, like not just your body, but with any of your choices, any decisions you wanted to make for yourself on your own account. So when my parents split up, I was like 11 when they split up. And so once that happened, everything was pretty unstable, back and forth between like both my parents' houses and just all over. Needing to hear and get the validation was so important to me. Like it was the most important thing to me. I didn't have it at home. We moved a lot. I never had stable friends. I never had a stable school. And so I was consistently, every time we moved to a new school, I would go to multiple schools within a school year. Nobody likes to be that awkward kid out. Like nobody likes to sit by themselves at lunch. I was desperately constantly trying to find people who would even like give me the time of day, to smile at me, to be nice to me. And as teenagers get older and hormones start raging, like that can very easily come from boys. I don't want to say like an easy target, but I really craved the validation from boys, which led me into being sexually active at a fairly young age. And I remember for my first time, the kid that I had sex with, he immediately stopped talking to me. Like as of the next day, we were in some classes together, sat somewhere else, totally stopped talking to me. The second one did it too. And that I think totally just broke me. And so I had a really hard time. I felt like the only thing that I could give was my body because that's what people were looking for. That's a lot. I mean, even girls and stuff like that's what you look at. That was just the culture is like, how cute are you? What did your body look like? That sort of thing. So, of course, it not being really belonging to me ever, it was just sort of like whatever I could get for it, whatever validations, like friends established that way. It went on that way for quite a while. Obviously, like the drugs and the alcohol and everything just went along with it and didn't make it any more stable. Once I moved out, which I was 17, and I really started feeling like I could make my own choices. I had a job. I was still in school at the time. I was living in not a very good situation, but I was feeling like I could actually make my own decisions. And along with that came like decisions about my own body. But obviously, that's not something that was easy to just like, oh, now I have control over all of this. This is something that was ingrained in me for a really long time. I still struggle with it. So I moved out. I was working on my own. I was making my own decisions. Eventually, it led me to moving to Colorado. I lived in Colorado for a very long time. And shortly after I moved there, I was the victim of a sexual assault. And I think that I absolutely don't want to put blame on myself or any other woman because there are so many people who deal with this. But I truly think that if I had more empowerment, felt more empowerment over my own body, I don't know that it would have happened. I don't know that I would have been in a situation where I was passive and timid and scared and not wanting to make a fuss, like not wanting to like cause a ruckus or anything. And I think that a lot of women and a lot of girls grew up that way, where we were told our voices aren't our own, like in the background, stay quiet, stay small. It took years of therapy. And as a matter of fact, like the therapy that I originally went through was helpful, but didn't actually overcome anything for years. And after I was married, had kids, is really when I started healing from the sexual assault. And another thing that I realized is that I didn't like having conversations about bodies, about sex. I mean, it was one thing to like joke about it and be crude about it and make fun of things like that, but I didn't actually like having like open conversations about it, even with my husband. It was really awkward. I've got two kiddos, and when my youngest one was 4, she was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. And so my husband and I were stuck. We were put in a position very quickly where we had to talk to both of our girls, her and her older sister, about what ovaries are and why they're important. And he also grew up in a fairly conservative environment. So like we realized neither of us really wanted to have these conversations. We didn't know where to start. We didn't know like how to talk to a 4 and a 6-year-old about these things. And so when I really dove in and started doing a lot of research, first of all, that is one thing that helped me understand all of the trauma that I went through as a child, because at the time it was just growing up and that it needed to be addressed. And then also it helped me understand that I was actually behind in these talks with my kids. We hadn't had any talks. I was probably in my late 20s before I even knew what a vulva was versus a vagina. And so I'm learning all of these things. And first of all, I did not want my girls to grow up in an environment that I grew up in. And regardless of like whether it was unstable because we moved a lot or whatever, I didn't want them to have the same feelings. I didn't want them to ever feel like they don't have control over their bodies, like they're only worth what someone will give them. And that's really what got me going on this entire role. As I dove into it, I really got into mental health, especially around teens and LGBT suicide prevention. And then, of course, sex education and the importance of it, and use the names of your body parts, like how much confidence that can give you just as a kid growing up, like knowing the names of the body parts, knowing what they're used for. And then as a parent, that just teaching your child the names of their body parts and having your child use that is the number one way to deter child predators. Like that's all you have to do is teach them what their body parts are called. And that is the number one way to keep your kids safe from child predators. And it's just simple things like that that I just blew my mind. I came across the statistic that the Netherlands, for example, are number one in sex education. They start teaching consent in preschool. They go through all of the body parts, like what sex is, how babies are made, and like give them the actual information. And then they also have the lowest rates of all developed countries in sexual assaults and STI transfers and teen pregnancies and abortions. And The US, here in the US, we are dead last in sex education. Like we come in dead last. And we have the absolute highest rates of sexual assault, sexual violence, STD, STI transfers, and teen pregnancies and abortions. And that just floored me. Like, all we have to do is to teach kids about sex and just be honest with them and teach them, like, oh, this is something all mammals do. And it's not like we're teaching like 4-year-olds about orgasms, right? Like, we're teaching them about their body, we're teaching them about consent, we're teaching them about how it works. And I think that there's so many parents out there that have grown up in an environment where they didn't have these conversations either. So if you've not had a good example of how these conversations should look, how do you know how to have the own conversation with your kid, especially when you have no idea like when to even start? When do you start talking to your kids about sex? And what I found is the most common reason that parents don't is because they're uncomfortable. Like they've got their own issues that they're dealing with, and like they're uncomfortable talking about sex. And followed by, I don't sexualize everything. The world is sexualized for sure, but like we sexualize a lot of stuff that our kids don't, especially when they're younger. But even like our teenagers and stuff, like, yeah, there's going to be like the jokes, and the middle school is going to be middle school and it'll always be that way. But at least have your kid know what they're going into when they start hearing things in the hallways. Like, at least have your kids know when they're in elementary school that like you can't get pregnant by kissing. Or anyway, I just I just went on a tangent. That's what got me into it. That's why I'm so passionate about it. I think that if we can just adapt a little bit and get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's not always going to be a happy conversation, but it's so important. And are you willing to be a little bit uncomfortable to keep your child safe and to give them a healthy childhood and into adulthood? And it even affects their own sex lives as they get older. Like if they have a good sex education and they're confident in their bodies, they're going to be more confident in the bedroom when they're having sex. And just everything causes everything. It affects everything.
I have the first thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about was you mentioned validation. And I'm curious to know, I know you saw it from the boys that you were in connection with, but what was it that you think you were looking for in terms of validation, maybe from your parents or from your friends, or like what was it that you were specifically looking for, and why did you seek it through sex?
That is a great question. And I think like the easy answer is just that like I belonged, that I was part of something, that people accepted me and liked me, and was easier to get along with others and have friends. But I think truly, I think it was a lot of, I just wanted to know that I was normal, like that there was nothing actually wrong with me. Everyone has like these demons in their heads, and it starts at a very young age. And I think as you go through puberty and all the hormones are raging, you start like second guessing everything. And I really just wanted to know that there was nothing about me that was wrong, inherently wrong. So I truly think it was more about fitting in, but I just felt like an outsider all the time because I felt weird in my own body. I felt strange, and I wanted to know that I was normal.
Yeah. Well, and that is a pretty common feeling, especially for kids at the age that we're talking about, teenagers, young teens, is that fitting in, that belonging, and not finding even a little bit within yourself as you seeking it from someone else. And it leads me to the question that I wrote down about consent and playing small, being quiet. It's hard to say no in general. It's hard.
Yeah.
Everybody struggles with saying no.
Yeah.
We want everybody, especially our young people, to be able to say no when it counts in the bedroom. And yet we're not giving any tools, any practice in consent as families, as educators. We expect kids to do as they're told. And so this experience that you had in a sexual situation where you had no capability of saying no because you were taught to be small, were taught to be quiet, and then you had no practice at all. So
Wait.
it's really interesting to me that you bring this up. It's not a surprise to me that we're seeing the statistics of how many sexual assaults are happening and how often whether you're a female or male, you don't feel comfortable saying no to what's happening. And also the fact that like both parties are probably not sure what they're doing,
Right.
how to say no or yes or whatever. And so they're just doing what somebody else has planted in their brains. And so
Yeah.
my question is, at the time that this happened, did you know it was a sexual assault because you were just doing what you were told?
No, I guess at the time I truly just wanted it to be over. Like, just do the thing you got to do, and I just want to get out of here. It happened at a party, and it wasn't even the person I went to the party with. But when I told the person that I went to the party with, he was like, "What?" And I was like, I don't want to. Just don't say anything. Don't make a big deal. I just want to go home. I just need to ride home. And he was the one actually that was like, I was living with my sister at the time. He was like, you need to tell her. He's like, just promise me you'll at least just tell her. And I was like, fine. I got home at like 2 or 3 in the morning, woke her up, told her, and seeing it from the outside, which she did, and obviously he did, she was like, holy crap. She got up. My brother-in-law was working nights at the time, called him. He had the police at the door, and his parents woke his parents up. They were at the door, took me to the hospital, got the rape kit done, like all of these things. And even during the rape kit, I was still thinking, like, this is so embarrassing because it's not going to show anything. And it really took the lady who performed the rape kit, her reassurance that like what she sees is not okay. This is not what happens with consensual sex. And I was, really? That is really what validated that what happened to me was not okay. So it certainly wasn't my feelings about it, because I was just like, I just want to get out of here. So just like sit still and be quiet and don't make a fuss about it. And I think that it's, for it to have to come from a professional at a hospital. I mean, you talk about like the statistics of sexual assault show that there are a ton, but when you talk about that, those are the ones that are reported. And
Right.
if it weren't for that guy who made me promise to tell my sister, and my sister then immediately taking action, this certainly would have gone not been reported for me either. And when it comes to consent, I think one of the most important things is that consent is not like the lack of a no. Like consent, if you don't say no, that doesn't mean that you have consent. Like consent is like an enthusiastic yes. And if you don't have an enthusiastic yes when you're of like sober mind, then that's not consent. It doesn't mean you can just keep going until someone stops you. And I think that it goes with boys and girls. Like I think especially when kids are younger and they're learning that, like it's all practice. They're all learning how to do this. And the number one form of sex education right now for teenagers is pornography. And I don't know if anyone is like up and up on the pornography today, but it is not the pornography we had when we were kids. And it's like statistically, as I'm sure you know, like it's harder for kids today to avoid pornography than it was for us to get our hands on it when we were kids. Like
Yeah.
they have to actively avoid seeing pornography. It's not a matter of your kid seeing it. It's a matter of when your kid is going to see it. And average age right now is 9 years old. And it's bad stuff. And that's what kids are going to, even girls as well. Like, that's what kids are going to learn how to do sex. And girls are going to it to see what it is they need to do to please a boy. And pornography they don't talk about the pleasure for women. They don't even really talk about like any of the pleasure for men aside from like the orgasm, and then it's done, and that's the end of sex. That's how you end sex. And there's so much that is wrong. We could just open up and have these conversations with our kids. Oh my gosh, could you imagine, like, if your kid can talk to you about sex, your kid can talk to you about LGBTQ and suicidal thoughts and drugs and alcohol abuse. Like if you can have those hard conversations, they open up so many doors of so many other things.
Yeah. And one of the things that has struck me in terms of building a relationship with my own teens and teenagers feeling comfortable building relationships with their parents is if I can't talk to my parent and ask my parent a question, then I'm going to find my answer somewhere else. And chances of me getting a valid, true answer from someone else is slim to none. And parents, it's okay to say, I don't know, but you know how to discern good information from bad information, I hope. And you can help
Right.
get that information. But I think the thing for me, the scariest thing for me as a parent is when my kid is not able to ask me where they're getting that information is the wrong place that I want them to get it. So
Right.
my husband will say, like, you're willing to have that conversation. I said, well, I'm more willing to have the conversation than I'm willing to have my kid get an answer from somebody else.
Exactly. Like when we were younger, we got information from our friends. It was like you heard stuff on the playground and that's how you got your information. And now it's Google and there's a lot of wrong information on Google. And I think one of the most important things I think parents need to understand, like you said, is like if you don't have the answer, that's you don't have to know. You don't have to know everything. Like nobody knows all the things. And if you don't know, that's okay. Like, tell them, you know what, I don't know. And you can either give them their age. If you're just like, let's look this up. Let's find a reputable site and figure this out. Or, you know what? I don't know. That's a great question. Let me think on that. Let me think of how to respond to that. Let me figure it out and make sure that you get back to them. And I think it's also okay to be a little uncomfortable, but own it. Like if your kids come to you and say, like, I don't know, what is a BJ short for? What does that mean? And you like panic and shut down, they're not going to ask you again because they're going to be like, well, that was not appropriate. I don't know what it was, but I'm not going to ask her again. But if you are uncomfortable, you're like, oh, where did you hear about that? I'm sorry. Like, this is a little uncomfortable for me, but you know what? Thank you for coming to me and asking me. Let's get this answer. This is what it's for. But yeah, own it. It's okay for your kids to know that you don't know all the answers. And it's okay for your kids to know that things make you uncomfortable. If you expect your kids to think that you're a perfect parent, like, can you imagine the failure you're setting them up for? They have to then meet your standard of perfection. Like, that's cruel. And if they can't see you make mistakes or you be uncomfortable or you struggle through things, like that's the best way that they're going to learn is by watching you. And if you refuse to let them see that side of you, then they're not learning how to do it either. I mean, they're learning how to do life from us, and no one's great at life. Like we can teach them what we know. We just have to be open about it.
Yeah. And I think of how often we as parents are seen by our youngest children as superheroes. And that feels really great until they see through the superhero-ness. And then all of a sudden, everything comes crashing down. Whereas if you take your cape off and say, I'm human and I make mistakes and I don't know everything, then they're not finding out a hard way that you are not a superhero. And I think one of the best tools that I've ever learned in having these uncomfortable conversations with teenagers is to reflect back to them a question before you have to answer. So if a child of a young age comes to me with a question like, what is a BJ? What does it stand for? I might ask, in what context? Like, how did you hear? Where were you when you heard this? And so it may not be what you think they think it is. And the context may be like, oh, we don't have to go to what in sexualized BJ stands for. Maybe it's something else.
Maybe they meant PBJ, like peanut butter and jelly. Oh, okay. You panicked for no reason. And now you've opened a weird can of worms you have to explain. Yeah.
I love it. So was it the moment in which your daughter was diagnosed with ovarian cancer? Like, what did you do and how did you take the experience of not knowing these things at your age or even currently at the age you were at to bringing it to the age of a 4 and I think you said 6-year-old? Like, how did you navigate that?
Well, one of the things that I learned, which is that like kids are smart. And I don't want to say like they're not as dumb as we think, but I think we dumb things down too much for kids. So, for example, like one thing that we early on started doing because we heard about it was when my daughter was getting put her under for surgeries or tests or whatever, she knew that it was called anesthesia, right? There was an anesthesiologist. She knew the words chemotherapy. Like she understood all of those words because we used those words in front of her and she had context for them. There are a lot of parents who didn't do that or don't do that, and it's just like, okay, it's sleepy gas or, whatever. And we were in Colorado at the time. And so we were Children's Hospital in Denver and they were just fabulous at talking to kids and being really honest in a kid-friendly way, to the point where like you can't tell a kid, oh, it's not going to hurt, it's not going to hurt, just, and then hurry and give them a shot because that hurt. They're not dumb. Next time they see a pointy needle, they're going to be like, ooh, you tell me it doesn't hurt, but it hurts. But just be honest with them and just be like, you know what? It's going to pinch. Yeah. It's not going to hurt, but it is going to pinch for a second. But it's super important that we do this. And like it helps keep you safe. And this is why. And one of the things my husband said, we had a friend say something in front of, we were talking about dinosaurs. And we had a friend, my husband said something about dinosaur being carnivorous. And we had a friend that was like, she doesn't know what a carnivore is. Like, what, why is she ever going to know what that is? And he's like, she's never going to know it if you don't ever use the word in front of her. Like, of course she's not going to know it if you don't say it. And I think that one thing that really helped me was like, our kids are just like, especially at that age, they're just little sponges and they're pulling everything in. But if you don't give them an opportunity to sponge something up, then of course they're not going to know it. So when we talked about ovaries and we talked about like how a woman's body works and what they have in their body versus what boys have in their bodies, and it wasn't a sexual thing, it was just education. It was just like, this is what our bodies do, this is what these bodies do. And it's not just humans either. Like, you're talking about like all mammals, this is how it works. I'm not talking about like erections and orgasms, we're talking about body parts, and it's no different than talking about how your lungs work or how your heart works. So I guess we did it in like a kid-friendly way without dumbing it down, like gave them the information with it still being accurate and correct and truthful and facts.
Well, and I think you put a real solid point on the fact you mentioned it earlier that when we give them the right words to use, it's empowering. So when you dumb something down to be like sleepy gas, right? And I wonder, why is it that I'm using that instead of anesthesia that makes you feel sleepy? Am I solving a problem by saying sleepy gas, or am I just avoiding having a conversation later when somebody else is using the actual word and my child is like, no, that's sleepy gas? And so it's really interesting that we input new words for the meaning when we could just use the words and describe the meaning. It's what you said, like putting it in context. And
Right.
I know that that statistic is so important. I hear it a lot on some of the other podcasts that I listen to about the easiest way to avoid a sexual predator having access to your child is giving them the actual names of their body parts so that they know that this is wrong.
Yeah, there's so many reasons for it. But as a sexual predator, if you were to hear one kid that doesn't ever talk about private parts and one kid that uses like vulva or penis, or, like, which kid has an open communication about their body with their parents? Which kid is it that's going to go home and when they say "how" or hoo-ha or wee wee, which parent is going to be like, where'd you hear that? Like, oh, probably from the playground, but dig into it a little bit. Okay, what's it actually called? Good. And if the kid is actually using those words, then you know that they're having those conversations at home. Like, you don't just tell them once and then expect them to remember it forever. So if they're having those conversations at home, then they're using the words outside of home, which I think some parents freak out about. What if they say it at preschool? What if they say it, and it's like, they might. Yeah, like, if they're going to talk about it, they're going to talk about it. Like, you give them the right word for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then if something, heaven forbid, if something does happen, oh my gosh, it's legally for prosecutors to then take it to court. If your child can give specifics, so much easier and quicker and easier. It's less traumatic, especially for the child, if they don't have to try to explain what happened, if they just have the words and they know the body parts and they know the difference between a vulva and a vagina. Like, a vagina is on the inside and a vulva is on the outside. So if they truly know that and they're talking to an investigator, there's no question. They don't need to dig further, and ask that child more questions. And then also just like doctor's visits and stuff. If their vagina is itchy, it's different than if their vulva is itchy, and it's going to be a different diagnosis or whatever. It's just like little things that I think we think that our kids maybe won't understand, but if we don't use the words, then of course they won't. And they understand a lot more than we give them credit for. Like, if you're using the word around them, they're going to pick it up. They'll get it.
So what advice would you give to a teenager or Alisha as a teenager now that you've taken this journey and this path? What are some of the tools or the things that you would go back and share with her?
Oh my gosh. For me personally, it would just be like, I think I would just say, you know what? You're right. This is shit. Like, this is nuts and this is crazy. But there's always that little tiny piece inside of you that feels real, and don't disconnect from that piece. Like, of course, you have like all these barriers outside of that little piece that's like protecting you and trying to make friends and trying to do this and all the things, but just don't lose sight of that little piece that's in you and just try to build on it as much as you can. I don't think that there's anything I could go back and say to myself that would have just made everything better and I'll go away.
Oh.
But to hold on to that little piece of like what truly is yourself and who you truly are on the inside, just don't lose it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's powerful. So, if parents are looking to connect with you, where do they find you?
So I am on Instagram. You can also join my newsletters, but it's at Sexpert Parenting. So expert with the S, Sexpert Parenting. Yeah, on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and you can go to sexpertparenting.org is my website, and you can join newsletters, and I'd love to chat. I love to, even if like you have a random questions. Oh, I got some great free resources out there. Talks about what to talk to, like how to talk to your tween about pornography. That's a good one. What to talk to your kid about at which ages, the what by when parent guide. And truly, like, if there are any just like oddball random ass questions, I'm so happy to help. Just reach out to me, email me, Alisha at sexpertparenting.org, or go to my website, and I'd love to help.
Yeah.
I just think it's so important. I just want parents to just do the things. Go talk to the kids. Go talk sex.
Well, and I think you bring up a resource that I, as a parent, didn't know that I could have. Like, you make it available to me to not be so afraid when said teenager comes and asks me a question, or my 7-year-old, they like they're being exposed so much earlier. Who do you want them to be exposed to it by? You or pornography? Like,
Right.
give them the tools to know. And
Yeah. They're going to hear the words. They're going to hear the phrases. They're going to know the things, but like, get in there first. Make sure that when they do hear it, they could be like, oh yeah, I already know about that. Yeah.
right from the start.
Right. Or like, actually, that's not true. You can't get pregnant that way. I don't know, whatever it is. Just get in there first. Make sure they're hearing it from you first.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time. It was great having this conversation.
I love talking. I can talk about sex all day long. And I really appreciate you having me on. I also want to thank you for what you're doing in the world, even just like your newsletters. I have your book, I've got your newsletters. There's so much about parenting that is hard. And, we don't know it all. And I get so much fantastic information from you. So I just want to thank you too for doing what you're doing. It's really changing lives, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. Are you ready to help the young people in your life unlock their inner strength and step confidently into leadership? The new workbook from Peers Not Fears, Your Voice Matters, Uncovering Your Unique Leadership. It's designed to help teens see the leader in themselves, step by step. It's not just a workbook. It's the first step towards a ripple effect that could change lives. Let's turn today's teens into tomorrow's titans. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other parents who might benefit from this conversation. Together, we can support our teens in building healthy, positive relationships and become leaders of tomorrow. Until next time, I'm Lorraine Connell, and this is Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans.